Peaceful protests erupted in our city streets all summer long, with seemingly no one, even law enforcement, willing to do anything about it. Much of the destruction was in the name of BLM. Now, after elections, it seems like BLM is no longer in the news or capturing attention like it used to. Why is that? My name is Ali Shoaga, and welcome to 10 Points to Ponder, where we like to talk about all the impolite topics, the things that you get canceled for: politics, Jesus, race, and manhood. Did we all get bamboozled by BLM? Here's 10 points to ponder. Point 1. America has a history of racism. No doubt about this. Cruel slavery tore at the soul of this country, causing a civil war. After these things, Jim Crow laws, racial segregation, discrimination, all of these things did not live up to the ideals of our founding, that all men are created equal. Movements like BLM are not interested in equality and living up to these ideals. They want to dismantle the Constitution, Declaration, and system of laws altogether. They think everything that contributed to the vast wealth and prosperity of this country is irredeemably tainted. They do this while living in the greatest country for Black people in the entire world, including Africa. Point 2. America is not racist now. For the past 50 years especially, America's been doing everything possible to run away from this legacy of oppression. Great society programs, affirmative action, equal opportunity, and laws against discrimination have helped some, but really, there's been a change in the attitudes of individual people. The problem with many of the laws and initiatives of the past 50 years is that they missed the elements of self-reliance and empowerment spoken of by Frederick Douglass in 1865 when he said, "If the Negro cannot stand, let him fall." BLM's message is the opposite: reliance on whites to dismantle the system so that we can have Marxist utopia. Point 3. BLM thrives on white guilt. White guilt is not being ashamed of individual actions or repentance, it's the terror of being labeled a racist. Shelby Steele has a great book about this topic I highly recommend. This is the selling point to white people. If you want to show that you're against racism, demonstrate that you're anti-racist by throwing bricks at the police and kneeling in repentance before a Black person, or laying on the ground with a kente cloth for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. In the end, all this does is make white people feel good about how righteous they are and perpetuates Black helplessness. Point 4. BLM perpetuates Black victimhood. If Blacks are perpetually victims and white people only can save them, who's superior and who's inferior? BLM would have you confuse pity with respect. No greater example of this than the last NBA season when players wore social justice messages on the backs of their jerseys. The most pitiful I saw was the players with "Love Us" on the back of their jerseys. Love us isn't putting food in your mouth or a roof over your head or feeding your children. BLM won't tell you that because they want to dismantle the nuclear family in favor of communal matriarchy. Point 5. BLM weaponized the charge of racism. Remember silence is violence? Remember the black squares? Remember the corporate statements of commitment to racial justice? It's nothing more than extortion. Agree with us or we will break stuff and we will get you fired. In America, since the 1970s, there is no worse or more ugly charge that you can lob at a white person than calling them a racist. Because of that, whites head for the hills to try to dissociate themselves from that charge even when they're not guilty. BLM weaponizes white guilt into Black power. Point 6. Surprise! BLM is part of the Democratic Party. Lockdowns weren't enough. People were still feeling optimistic about the country and the economy and were gonna vote for Trump. The whole point of the protest was to stir up enough white guilt to get people to show that they weren't racist by donating to BLM and voting for Joe Biden. This is how you demonstrate that you, quote-unquote, love us. BLM were opportunists throwing gasoline on the fires of COVID lockdowns. People got the message, and donations to BLM rose quickly. Pay up, or we will burn your city down. Point 7. BLM does not care about black lives. More black people are killed by abortion and gang violence disproportionately. Don't let the name fool you. They are a political organization interested only in one cultural meme: white police officers killing black men in disproportionate numbers. Some quick math. First, in 2019, 14 unarmed black people were shot and killed by the police. Second, there are about 50 million police public contacts per year. This 50 million stops divided by 14 unarmed blacks makes the odds 1 in 3,571,428. That's about the same odds as being struck by lightning. This is the lie that has people out in the streets? To borrow a line from Malcolm X in the movie, he said, "You been hoodwinked. You been bamboozled." Point 8. BLM wants power, not justice. Justice means that the person gets their due and we examine the evidence. Even with George Floyd, we need to wait for the facts. It was malpractice to let the first video out without the body camera footage. Context means something, and for all the censoring and fact-checking that big tech does do, they didn't attach any fact checks to the George Floyd video. They could have saved lives. Society needs to be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. In the aftermath of the riots, homicides are skyrocketing, while police are quitting and retiring en masse. And with the elimination of the police, I have to join Charles Barkley in asking, now, who you gonna call? Ghostbusters? Point 9. While they're fooling you, BLM itself is being bamboozled. While BLM is fooling everybody else, they're being used by white liberals as human shields, both literally and figuratively. Remember the mostly peaceful protests when a line of black people would be in front marching and in the midst would be some white 20-something college student in all black that would lob bricks to the police? And then when the police would advance, all the black people in front would be the first ones to get crushed. In the same way, Antifa uses BLM as a means of shielding themselves from societal repudiation. When BLM is attached to something, people look the other way for fear of being labeled a racist. BLM is just a means to accomplish deeper anti-government ends. Point 10, you might be surprised to hear this, BLM is reinstituting slavery. Jason Whitlock said it best that the black identity has been defined by white liberals. No other group but black people strive to define themselves first by their race. For BLM, your blackness comes above faith, family, freedom, citizenship, everything. And what are the characteristics? Self-destruction, violence, inarticulation, immoral, effeminate, promiscuous, disorganized, emotional, racist against whites. I could go on and on and on. And sadly, the most authentically black thing that you can say is the N-word. BLM makes the acceptance of victimhood and antisocial behavior part of the black identity. This is mental slavery. So what did BLM accomplish? Donations to the Democrats, the stoking of racial tensions, demonization of whites as evil, cities overrun with Antifa, burned buildings and shops? All this is so that when the peasants are finally removed from solitary confinement, there won't be a building to return to. Better go work for Amazon. With the election being over, I would guess that BLM will probably lie dormant until 2024. But hey, I could be wrong. What do you think? Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. This has been 10 points to ponder.